how did you price and estimate? Let's bundle those because they're pretty intertwined, right? So how did you price and estimate jobs, out of the gate, and then talk about your journey with pricing and estimating, how that's shifted and expanded to, and then let's dig into how you'd estimate and price a job today.
Yeah, wildly different the way I do it now than when I did it before. I remember I just pulled a number out of thin air, and I'm like, I'm currently making $20 an hour at my job, so I want to make $50 an hour. That sounds good. That sounds a lot more than 20. So I started charging $50 an hour in my business, which sounds like a lot of money, right? But at the end of the day, which I didn't know then that I know now, is there's a whole lot more expenses when you run a business than when you just take a paycheck. You know what I mean? You have, general liability insurance, you have business license, you have a truck to run, you have tools to run, you have gas to put in the tools, or gas to put in the truck. You have to feed yourself, you have to feed your family, you have to pay your mortgage, you have to pay medical insurance. There's all kinds of stuff. So that $50 an hour gets whittled down, and it ended up less than $20 an hour at the end of the day, right? So yeah.
To stop you real quick there, because you mentioned earlier that you were making more on the side as a handyman than at your day job. So did you find out when you started that were you still making more even when you factored in the
No,
cost?
I was making less.
You were making less. But that's a common issue, right? Anyone starting or thinking about starting, look at the numbers in detail. Don't just look at your billable, like what your $50 an hour. You got to dig a little bit deeper because you don't want to leave, especially if you have a family to take care of and financial liabilities and things like that. Don't catch yourself off guard with that. So
and with that, I got to throw it out there that we've created a course to help people actually figure out what their hourly need needs to be. I call it an hourly need because that's really what it comes down to. And a lot of times it's higher than what you think, And that platform is called Handyman Journey 101. That's basically the basics that I think if I had to go back, I would have wanted to take Handyman Journey 101. It didn't exist at the time, but that's what I would say to people looking to start a business is you got to take Handyman Journey 101, figure out your numbers, write a business plan, and figure out a marketing strategy. It's so important. But yeah.
And there's the book too. I'm just going to go ahead and plug, the Handyman Journey stuff. Of course, I have no incentive to do it. But Alan, I've just all my conversations, the knowledge, the insights that's gained from the 101. Lately I've been hearing about the pricing book. That's a whole book, the handbook that goes into the pricing. I just encourage people that, and Alan too, and honestly, YouTube channel, a Handyman Journey YouTube channel. Is it honestly? Is it now the Handyman Journey is the title of the YouTube channel? There's tons of free content, just tons of it. So educate yourself and watch some YouTube. Check out the book, check out the course, so that you can get off on the right footing. And like Alan mentioned, it's basically to me. And I love this. I try to do the same thing, is giving other people exactly what you would have wanted, but you didn't have when you started out. Because there's so many issues and problems that could be overcome if you just had if you just watched that video, read that book, they're like, I wish I knew that. Yeah. So I commend you for, along the way, not only, a handyman business is going to do $300,000 this year, but along the way creating helpful content and material for others on the same journey, the same path as you are. It's awesome, man. It's awesome. So sorry, we sidetracked from pricing. So $50 an hour. Thanks. You had no idea what you were doing. You were actually making way less than $50 an hour. So how did you go from there?
In one, I just want to share a quick story about the estimating side of things. Right, estimating is all about the verbiage you use. And really. Right now I use Mark8, which is a handyman CRM, and highly recommend that because you write an estimate in a way that everything's documented. There's no questions about anything, and the client signs it, give you a deposit, whatever. But back then when I was charging $50 an hour and just starting out, I had no clue what a CRM was, and so I remember this one job that she needed her gutters cleaned and then one downspout fixed, and I told her, at that point, I decided to do a 2-hour minimum, right? Like I was going to come out for $50 an hour, but it's a 2-hour minimum. And so I told her, I'm $50 an hour, 2-hour minimum, right? That's all we talked about. And so I do the job and I finish in about an hour and a half. And she says, okay, what's the total going to be? And I'm like, well, $100, because it's a 2-hour minimum. She says, well, you said $50 an hour and you were here for an hour and a half. So I'll give you 75. So it's very interesting, right? You have to have right estimates,
Yeah.
and writing them up and having them sign it is the best way to do it. Don't get taken advantage of like I did, but,
and Marquette makes that easy.
They do. So after that, I'm like, I'm not making any money. This sucks. You know what I mean? Like I'm loving the work, but I'm not making any money, and I'm struggling. So I really sat down and what I recommend doing, a little bit of, glimpse into the book, of the Handyman Pricing Handbook, but there's obviously more info in there. I recommend printing out three months of your bank statements and getting highlighters, different colored highlighters, and highlight different things. Make a highlighted color for fast food, a highlighted color for groceries, a highlighted color for mortgage, a highlight cover for materials, so you'll have all these different colors and you'll be able to figure out exactly how much each category is costing you. And what you might find is that you spent $300 every month at McDonald's. That's your first thing. Cut that out, right? And you're going to save a whole crap load of money. But that just really helps you figure out what your expenses are. And then you divide that by how many hours there are in a month, and then you can figure out what your hourly need is. And then obviously you add things on top of it like break even and profit and things like that. So then after that, I started charging $75 an hour. I remember I did the first hour was $100, and then every hour after that was 75. That's how I did it at that point. And I worked predominantly by the hour, at that point. And then it progressed further from there where it was $75 an hour.
$100 the first hour.
$100 the first hour.
And is that the model that you used to get to the point where you brought on Frank? Was that, or what? I guess let's put it in the realm of time here.
Of time and growth.
Yeah. So $100 the first hour, $75 an hour after that. Is that the pricing that you had up until Frank, and then it did change when you brought on your first technician?
We did another pricing. I'm trying to remember here. We did another pricing change where we went from $75 an hour, from $100 for the first hour and $75 after that. We just went to a 2-hour minimum, so it was $150 for a minimum.
Okay.
And then it was $75 after that.
Okay.
So that, I think at that point we brought Frank on as an independent contractor. He started as an independent contractor, I want to say at the beginning of 2018. So we were in business for about a year, and basically it was I send him leads, he goes estimates that job, sells the job, does the job, gets the check written out to Honestly Handyman, and then we cut him a check for the certain percentage that we had discussed that we give him. So that's kind of how we outlined independent contractors.
So you just did everything but the sales and the work, and kind of gave the platform.
Right.
Do you mind sharing like what kind of percentage that was?
I think we started out at 60-40. So honestly, was getting 60, he was getting 40%.
Okay.
And then I think after that we moved where it was even the opposite, 60-40.
Okay.
I can't quite remember the exact details, but that was kind of a progression over 2 years because we hired him full time. Was it July of 2019?
Okay.
We hired him as an actual W-2 employee. Yeah.
Okay. So after about a year and a half of the subcontractor arrangement. Okay.
Yeah, and then through that, he was working his own job. Like he would work in the days.
Okay.
He was an auto mechanic, and we actually met at the auto shop. And then he would work for me in the nights, and not really weekends. We didn't work the weekends, but in the nights.
So whenever Frank was on doing the subcontractor thing, you were still out in the field at that point.
Yes. Yeah. So I was out doing
technically
either
2 technician or 1 full-time technician and 1 part-time.
Yeah. So I was either doing the work with him, or I was doing a separate job, and he was doing a separate job.
Did you like what would you say your experiences with that kind of arrangement
in
that time?
It was very fun. It was fun, but it also
Was it profitable?
No. It was profitable when we worked on separate jobs, but when we worked together, it wasn't very profitable.
Okay.
Because I still did the same amount of work, but only got 60%.
Yeah.
But it was very fun, but it was not good for my marriage. Because I remember I would be out in the nights, right? Because Frank worked during the day, and he'd work at his automotive job during the day and then work for me at night. And so I'd be out at night, and it created a lot of problems because I wasn't there for my wife.
Yeah.
You know, I had fun because I was hanging out with a good friend at night.
Yeah.
But when you grow up and, you know, you start adulting, you have to start, you know, taking care of your wife more than your friends.
Yeah.
So that was another lesson.
I think that's a good point too, that isn't really talked about much, but you know, everything sits on, you know, I mean, there's layers, but I know for us, it's like our faith, and then it's family. And if you don't take care of those foundational pieces, where then, you know, on top of those, somewhere is business.
Yeah.
If your foundation's cracked below that, your business is going to fall through those cracks. And so being mindful of spending a good what it takes to take care of your family and make sure that piece of your life is grounded and everyone's happy is so important. And not that there's not a time and a phase of that hustle and working 68 hours a week, working the weekends, working the evenings. There's for most entrepreneurs, there's a phase of that, right?
Yeah.
But it's not sustainable long term.
Right. And I think it all comes back to your pricing, you know, because if you are charging correctly and enough, you can afford to take care of those priorities before your business. Like, you know, a lot of people, and even me at one point, if you looked at my priorities, business was number one. But really, like, you know, I believe priorities should be, you know, God, and then yourself, and then your spouse, and then your kids, and then business, you know? So business is actually the fifth priority there, you know, but oftentimes people put it at the number one because they're like, I'm not making very much money, so if I work harder and longer at this, then I will make more money. And that's not how it works, you know? And they end up sacrificing everything else for the business, and it gets worse, you know?
You know, it's, there's this resounding majority, like within my own coaching, within marketing, people often I'll see in our mastermind, I'm so burnt out, I'm working all the time, and like I'm not meeting my goals financially. And all of the very experienced, you know, successful business people all say the same thing: raise your prices.
Yes. Right.
Because it's just, for some reason, it's one of the last things instinctually, like, you know, especially new business owners will look at. But I love that. I love that the conversation went here, man, because it's so important to take care of your faith, your home life, yourself. Because if you're not taking care of those things, if you can't take care of your wife, how are you going to take care of your custoer?
Right.
I mean, you know?
Or your employees, like
your employees, yeah.
And at some point, you got to ask yourself, did I create a business, or did I just create a job? You know, and you got to be real with yourself. And for me, I created a job back in the day, right? Now I feel like I have more of a business than a job, which is good, right? But there takes some gut checks to get there. You know? And you got to be real with yourself. Yeah,
for sure. And I know too, just there's guys I know that they're just solopreneurs, but in my mind, they've created a business that they can take that time off and be flexible to the life things. But it's all about, one of the big factors is pricing, because you got to price high enough so you can take 2 weeks off around Christmas and the holidays.
You have to look at your priorities and what do you want out of life, you know? What do you want out of your business? Like, I know I talked to a big plumbing and heating company in the area a few months ago, and they were saying, and this was started 30, 40 years ago. And so the guy who started it is no longer he's a part owner. He owns so many shares in the business, but he's not the CEO anymore. And he was saying that when Mark Bonney created the business, like, he had very distinct things in mind, right? Like, for one, up until he got up to 100 employees, he wanted to take all the employees and their family to Hawaii for 1 week every year. That was one of his dead set goals. So he had to add that into his pricing. You know what I mean? He wanted to buy a cabin and allow each family, you know, that's his employee, to basically have that cabin for 2 weeks out of every year.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, he had to build that into his pricing. You know, so it's like, what do you want not only for yourself but for your employees, and build that into your pricing. Yeah. And that's why we're the most expensive handyman in this area. Yeah. You know, because we don't want to just be like striving. We want to be thriving, you know.